I still replay that night sometimes, the cold dread, the searing humiliation, as my boyfriend of 2 years looked me dead in the eyes, called me ugly, and then dumped me in a crowded restaurant, all while leaving me with a massive bill. But trust me, that was just the very beginning of his spectacular downfall, and I wasn't about to let him get away with it. Seriously, you guys, I'm still trying to process everything that went down last weekend. My brain keeps hitting rewind, playing it over and over, making me wonder if I somehow imagined the entire thing. But nope, my maxed out credit card statement and the lingering ice cream stains on my couch confirm it was all painfully, embarrassingly real. Just to give you some background, Ryan and I had been together for 2 whole years. This wasn't some casual fling or anything. We had a proper routine, Netflix marathons on Sundays, those slightly awkward holiday dinners with both our families, and even that weird couples yoga class he insisted we try, which, to be honest, we both totally sucked at. Things weren't perfect between us. I mean, are they ever? But I honestly thought we were solid. We'd even started talking about maybe moving in together that summer. Of course, he had his little annoying habits. Like leaving his socks literally everywhere, texting non-stop during movies, and making these helpful comments about my appearance. Stuff like, that shirt makes your arms look bigger, or have you ever thought about trying a different hairstyle? And, bless my naive past self, I always just brushed it off. He's just being honest, I'd tell myself. Man, past me was such a doormat. So last Friday, Ryan texts me out of the blue about dinner with some of his work friends. This was actually a big deal because he'd never really included me in his professional life before, always saying it wasn't appropriate, or whatever. So, I was genuinely excited. I even went shopping for a brand new outfit. Rest in peace, my budget, and spent forever getting ready. I'm talking a full-on YouTube makeup tutorial, using the fancy hair straightener I only pull out for special occasions, the whole 9 yards. I wanted to make a good impression. I arrive at this super swanky, expensive restaurant downtown. The kind with tiny portions and, tellingly, no prices listed on the menu. That should have been red flag number 1, right there. Ryan's already seated with 2 guys he works with, Leonard and Pablo. The moment I walk up, there's this immediate, weird vibe. Ryan barely acknowledges me. He just half stands from his chair and mutters, "You're late." I was literally 2 minutes behind schedule because parking downtown was an absolute nightmare. I sit down, and he looks at my outfit and says, not quietly, "Oh, you wore that?" His friends exchanged a quick, knowing look, and I could feel my face getting hot instantly. For the record, it was a dark blue dress that I genuinely thought looked nice. Nothing crazy or inappropriate. I tried to laugh it off, like, is there a dress code I missed? But he just shrugged and said they'd already ordered appetizers. Awesome. The next hour was basically Ryan talking non-stop about work stuff that made absolutely no sense to me, while his friends just nodded along obediently. Every single time I tried to join the conversation, Ryan either talked right over me or launched into a detailed explanation of why whatever I'd just said was completely wrong. At one point, I mentioned something about a customer at my own store, and Ryan actually interrupted me with, "She doesn't really get how things work in the real business world," accompanied by this dismissive wave, as if retail isn't a real job. I've been a manager for 3 years. I sat there, growing more and more uncomfortable, wondering if Ryan had always been this incredibly condescending and I just somehow never noticed, or if he was just showing off for his friends. Either way, it was a terrible look. Then, Leonard asks how we met, and I start telling the story about how Ryan's coworker, Vanessa, is actually my best friend and introduced us. Ryan cuts me off mid-sentence and says, "Yeah, Vanessa felt bad for her. I was doing a favor, really." Then he actually laughs. You guys, my stomach literally dropped. That's not even remotely close to how it happened. Vanessa had actually warned me about Ryan's massive ego before setting us up, but she said he was a good guy underneath it all. Spoiler alert, he definitely wasn't. I excused myself to the bathroom, mostly so I wouldn't burst into tears right in front of them. I'm in the stall, frantically texting Vanessa like, "What the actual heck is happening?" when I get a notification. Ryan just tagged himself at this restaurant on Instagram with the caption, "Boys' Night Out." Like I wasn't even there. Vanessa calls me immediately, but I send her to voicemail because I absolutely did not want the guys to hear me crying. I splashed some water on my face, fixed my makeup, and gave myself this sad little pep talk in the mirror about just getting through dinner with some semblance of dignity. When I got back to the table, they were all laughing about something, but they stopped abruptly when I sat down. Great. The waiter brought our main courses. I had ordered pasta, one of the less expensive options on the menu, because I was already starting to worry about the bill. And Ryan just kept making these snarky jokes about my food choice. He said things like, "Carb loading for a marathon," and "That's a bold choice for someone with your body type." Each comment felt like a tiny paper cut, and they were adding up fast. At this point, I was barely eating, just pushing food around my plate and counting down the minutes until I could finally leave. Then Pablo asks Ryan about some presentation, and Ryan launches into this whole elaborate story about how his boss absolutely loved his ideas and how he was practically running the entire project now. Something just clicked into place in my brain. Just the week before, Ryan had been stressing out about this very same presentation, saying his portion was only 5 minutes long and he was super nervous. Now, suddenly, he's the undisputed star? It was like he was living in some alternate universe where he was the main character. Then, the bill arrived. The waiter set it on the table, and Ryan picked it up, looked at it for a second, then slid it straight over to me. I thought he was just showing me the total, but then he said, "And I swear I will never forget this. You know what? I don't think this is working." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for some kind of joke. There wasn't one. "I've been trying to make this work, but honestly, I'm just not attracted to you anymore. I think we should break up." In the middle of a busy restaurant. In front of his friends. After 2 years together. Who in their right mind does that? I was completely blindsided. "Are you serious right now? This is how you want to do this?" He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and said, "I still get a knot in my stomach just thinking about it. A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you this long. You're not exactly a prize." Then he and his friends just left. They all walked out together, laughing, leaving me sitting there alone with a $347 bill for all their stupid Wagyu appetizers and fancy cocktails. The waiter came over with this look of profound pity that somehow made everything 1,000 times worse. I paid the bill with my credit card, which, by the way, I'm still paying off from Christmas, so thanks a lot, and somehow made it to my car without completely falling apart. I called Vanessa from the parking lot, sobbing so hard she couldn't understand a word I was saying at first. She came straight to my apartment with a pint of Ben & Jerry's and a bottle of wine. Seriously, she's the real MVP. Between ugly crying and stress-eating cookie dough, I told her every single detail. She was absolutely livid. Like, I literally had to talk her out of driving straight to Ryan's place and causing a scene. That's when Vanessa got a little weird. She kept asking all these specific questions about what Ryan had said about work, the project he mentioned, his exact role in the company. Finally, she just said, "Sabrina, I don't even know how to tell you this, but Ryan isn't who he says he is at work." Turns out, Ryan isn't some hotshot marketing guy who's about to get promoted. He's basically an assistant. He makes coffee runs. He schedules meetings. All those elaborate business trips. Complete fabrications. The big presentation he was supposedly leading? He was just doing the slides for the actual team. And that fancy title on his LinkedIn? Total fiction. I felt like such an idiot. For 2 whole years, this guy had been lying about practically everything, and I never once questioned it. What else had he been lying about? That night, after Vanessa left, I went into full-on detective mode. I scrolled back through our entire text history, our photos, everything. So many inconsistencies I'd completely missed. Comments about money that just didn't add up. Times he supposedly had to work late, but his phone's location showed him clear across town. I couldn't sleep a wink. I just kept replaying that horrifying moment in the restaurant, how small he made me feel, how utterly humiliated I was. At like 3 a.m., I get a text from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Hey, it's Cody from Ryan's office. Vanessa gave me your number. There's some stuff you should know." That's when things got really interesting. First off, thank you all so much for the incredibly supportive comments on my last post. I literally teared up reading some of them. In a good way, I promise. A lot of you asked for an update, so here's what happened next in this absolutely wild, dramatic situation. After finding out from Cody, Ryan's coworker, that my boyfriend of 2 years had basically been living in this elaborate fantasy world of his own making, I spent the next few days in that miserable post-breakup fog. You know the one, where you're just alternating between sobbing into a pint of ice cream and angrily scrolling through old photos, desperately wondering if any of it was even real. My apartment looked like a total disaster zone. Dishes piled up, laundry everywhere, and probably 7 empty DoorDash bags because the thought of actually cooking anything felt impossible. The worst part was that I kept having these moments where I'd think of something funny to text Ryan, then suddenly remember what had happened, and it was like being dumped all over again. My brain was stuck in a loop of, did that really happen? And, how did I not see any of this coming? I'd also been completely avoiding social media because I just knew Ryan would post something incredibly annoying. But Wednesday morning, I finally caved and checked Instagram. Sure enough, there was Ryan, with a gym selfie captioned, "Level up. Know your worth." The sheer audacity. I nearly threw my phone across the room. Vanessa came over that evening with takeout and found me wrapped in my comforter like a sad burrito. She's been absolutely amazing through this whole thing, making sure I actually eat real food, listening to me rant about the same exact things over and over, and not once saying, "I told you so," even though she definitely had her suspicions about Ryan from the very beginning. While we were eating, Vanessa showed me her texts with Cody. Apparently, they'd been talking a lot, and he had a whole lot of juicy tea to spill. According to Cody, Ryan had been telling everyone at work that he dumped me because I was clingy, and always talking about marriage. What? I was not the one who created a Pinterest board called Future Home Ideas. Yes, Ryan actually had one of these, which he claimed was research for some work project. Then Cody dropped the real bombshell. Ryan wasn't just lying about his job title. He was actually on probation for taking credit for other people's work and might seriously get fired very soon. All those late nights working. He was frantically trying to fix his own mistakes before anyone noticed. Those business trips? Total fiction. I was still reeling and processing all of this when my phone rang. It was Tina, Ryan's mom. I almost didn't answer. Super awkward. But figured I should try to be an adult about it. Tina has always been incredibly sweet to me, the kind of sweet where she actually remembers my birthday and asks genuine questions about my life. She sounded concerned and asked if everything was okay between me and Ryan. Apparently, he had told his family we just had a little fight, but everything was fine. A little fight. The man publicly humiliated me, dumped me in front of his friends, and then stuck me with a massive bill. I tried to keep it vague, just saying we were taking some space, because I really didn't want to put her in the middle of it. Then she casually mentioned Ryan's birthday dinner on Saturday and how the whole family was really looking forward to seeing me there. You guys, I nearly choked on my pad thai. Ryan had told his family we were still together and that I was actually coming to his birthday dinner. The dinner was at his parents' house, and apparently, he had even told them we had big news to share. After hanging up, I just sat there in shock while Vanessa looked at me like I'd grown a second head. She was like, is he delusional or just a pathological liar? Honestly, I was wondering the exact same thing. That's when we came up with the plan. I wasn't going to just ghost his family. They had always been kind to me, and they deserved to know what kind of person Ryan really was. But I also wasn't going to cause a scene or be vindictive. I would simply attend the dinner as invited, and then just let the truth come out naturally. The next day, Cody met me for coffee. It was slightly awkward, since we'd only really met through Ryan, but he turned out to be genuinely chill. He confirmed everything I'd already heard and even added even more details about Ryan's work lies. The team Ryan claimed to lead was actually just him and 2 interns. The big presentation he was supposedly in charge of last month? He was literally just operating the slideshow while his boss did all the talking. Cody seemed genuinely upset on my behalf, saying he'd always thought Ryan's stories about me seemed a little off. Apparently, Ryan would come to work complaining that I was high maintenance, when, in reality, I was paying for most of our dates toward the end because Ryan claimed to be between paychecks, which I now realized probably meant he was just terrible with money. Midway through our conversation, Cody got a text from their boss asking if he could come in Saturday evening to help with some emergency project. Cody was bummed because he'd had plans. But then, I had an idea. What if Cody needed to drop something off at Ryan's parents' house during the birthday dinner? The timing would be absolutely perfect. As we were figuring out the details, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. It was the first one since the restaurant disaster. It just said, "We need to talk about what happened. I might have overreacted." Might have. I showed Cody, and he nearly spit out his coffee laughing. Overreacted is when you get annoyed about someone being late, not when you publicly humiliate your girlfriend of 2 years and then stick her with a $300 bill. I didn't respond. I decided to just let him sweat a little. The next 2 days were a blur of intense preparation. I was absolutely not going to this dinner unprepared. I dug through old texts, finding all the evidence of his lies. Specific dates when he claimed to be at work, conferences that simply didn't exist, stories about co-workers that Cody later confirmed were completely fabricated, even photos Ryan had posted of himself at work events that were actually just downloaded from the company website. Friday night, Vanessa came over to help me pick out an outfit. I'm not going to lie, part of me really wanted to show up looking absolutely stunning, just to spite him. But we decided the best approach was to look nice, but not like I was trying too hard. We settled on a simple black dress that Ryan once said made me look average, which I now realize was just his weird attempt to insult me, because I always got compliments whenever I wore it. I barely slept Friday night. What if this whole thing backfired spectacularly? What if his family took his side? What if I completely froze up and couldn't go through with it? By Saturday morning, I had chewed my nails down to nothing and gone through about 17 different disastrous scenarios in my head. Around noon, Ryan texted again. "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited." I didn't respond to that either. I just let him think whatever he wanted. I spent the afternoon getting ready with this weird mix of dread and anticipation bubbling inside me. Vanessa helped me with my hair and gave me a much-needed pep talk when I started to completely lose my nerve. At 5:30, I got in my car and started heading to his parents' house. I actually had to pull over once because my hands were shaking too much to drive safely. I sat there for a minute, doing those deep breathing exercises from that meditation app one downloaded months ago but never actually used. What was I doing? Was this crazy? Maybe I should just block Ryan on everything and move on with my life like a normal, well-adjusted person. But then I thought about him, sitting there at his birthday dinner, probably telling everyone some completely fake story of our relationship, maybe even making himself out to be the victim somehow. And my resolve hardened. I pulled up to his parents' house at 6:15, fashionably late, which I knew would annoy Ryan to no end. There were several cars already in the driveway. It looked like the whole family was there. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror one last time, took one final deep breath, and walked to the door. I was still reeling and processing all of this when my phone rang. It was Tina, Ryan's mom. I almost didn't answer. Super awkward. But figured I should try to be an adult about it. Tina has always been incredibly sweet to me, the kind of sweet where she actually remembers my birthday and asks genuine questions about my life. She sounded concerned and asked if everything was okay between me and Ryan. Apparently, he had told his family we just had a little fight, but everything was fine. A little fight. The man publicly humiliated me, dumped me in front of his friends, and then stuck me with a massive bill. I tried to keep it vague, just saying we were taking some space, because I really didn't want to put her in the middle of it. Then she casually mentioned Ryan's birthday dinner on Saturday and how the whole family was really looking forward to seeing me there. You guys, I nearly choked on my pad thai. Ryan had told his family we were still together and that I was actually coming to his birthday dinner. The dinner was at his parents' house, and apparently, he had even told them we had big news to share. After hanging up, I just sat there in shock while Vanessa looked at me like I'd grown a second head. She was like, "Is he delusional or just a pathological liar?" Honestly, I was wondering the exact same thing. That's when we came up with the plan. I wasn't going to just ghost his family. They had always been kind to me, and they deserved to know what kind of person Ryan really was. But I also wasn't going to cause a scene or be vindictive. I would simply attend the dinner as invited, and then just let the truth come out naturally. The next day, Cody met me for coffee. It was slightly awkward, since we'd only really met through Ryan, but he turned out to be genuinely chill. He confirmed everything I'd already heard and even added even more details about Ryan's work lies. The team Ryan claimed to lead was actually just him and 2 interns. The big presentation he was supposedly in charge of last month? He was literally just operating the slideshow while his boss did all the talking. Cody seemed genuinely upset on my behalf, saying he'd always thought Ryan's stories about me seemed a little off. Apparently, Ryan would come to work complaining that I was high maintenance, when, in reality, I was paying for most of our dates toward the end because Ryan claimed to be between paychecks, which I now realized probably meant he was just terrible with money. Midway through our conversation, Cody got a text from their boss asking if he could come in Saturday evening to help with some emergency project. Cody was bummed because he'd had plans. But then, I had an idea. What if Cody needed to drop something off at Ryan's parents' house during the birthday dinner? The timing would be absolutely perfect. As we were figuring out the details, my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. It was the first one since the restaurant disaster. It just said, "We need to talk about what happened. I might have overreacted." Might have. I showed Cody, and he nearly spit out his coffee laughing. Overreacted is when you get annoyed about someone being late, not when you publicly humiliate your girlfriend of 2 years and then stick her with a $300 bill. I didn't respond. I decided to just let him sweat a little. The next 2 days were a blur of intense preparation. I was absolutely not going to this dinner unprepared. I dug through old texts, finding all the evidence of his lies, specific dates when he claimed to be at work, conferences that simply didn't exist, stories about co-workers that Cody later confirmed were completely fabricated, even photos Ryan had posted of himself at work events that were actually just downloaded from the company website. Friday night, Vanessa came over to help me pick out an outfit. I'm not going to lie, part of me really wanted to show up looking absolutely stunning, just to spite him. But we decided the best approach was to look nice, but not like I was trying too hard. We settled on a simple black dress that Ryan once said made me look average, which I now realize was just his weird attempt to insult me, because I always got compliments whenever I wore it. I barely slept Friday night. What if this whole thing backfired spectacularly? What if his family took his side? What if I completely froze up and couldn't go through with it? By Saturday morning, I had chewed my nails down to nothing and gone through about 17 different disastrous scenarios in my head. Around noon, Ryan texted again. "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited." I didn't respond to that either. I just let him think whatever he wanted. I spent the afternoon getting ready with this weird mix of dread and anticipation bubbling inside me. Vanessa helped me with my hair and gave me a much-needed pep talk when I started to completely lose my nerve. At 5:30, I got in my car and started heading to his parents' house. I actually had to pull over once because my hands were shaking too much to drive safely. I sat there for a minute, doing those deep breathing exercises from that meditation app one downloaded months ago but never actually used. What was I doing? Was this crazy? Maybe I should just block Ryan on everything and move on with my life like a normal, well-adjusted person. But then I thought about him, sitting there at his birthday dinner, probably telling everyone some completely fake story of our relationship, maybe even making himself out to be the victim somehow. And my resolve hardened. I pulled up to his parents' house at 6:15, fashionably late, which I knew would annoy Ryan to no end. There were several cars already in the driveway. It looked like the whole family was there. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror one last time, took one final deep breath, and walked to the door. Ryan tried to usher Cody toward the front door, but Ralph insisted they could handle work stuff right there at the table, since we're all family here. Cody sat down in the empty chair beside me, which I'd strategically saved, not gonna lie. Ryan was gripping his fork so hard I honestly thought it might bend. That's when Ralph asked Cody how the big presentation went, the one Ryan had apparently been leading. Cody looked confused for a second before catching on. He glanced at me, then at Ryan, and I could literally see him making a decision. Cody said the presentation went well, but clarified that their boss had delivered it, with Ryan and the team merely providing support. Ralph looked utterly confused and said that wasn't at all how Ryan had described it. I jumped in because I'm messy like that, and asked Cody about Ryan's promotion. Poor Cody looked so uncomfortable, caught between loyalty to a coworker and not wanting to outright lie to an entire family. He fidgeted with his napkin and said something vague about company restructuring. Ryan interrupted with this fake, nervous laugh and tried changing the subject to sports or whatever, but his sister, Kayla, wasn't having it. She asked Cody point-blank what Ryan's current title was. The silence that followed was like that moment when you drop something loud in a public bathroom. Everyone hears it, no one wants to acknowledge it. Cody looked at Ryan, who was silently pleading with his eyes, then at me. I nodded slightly. He cleared his throat and said that Ryan was an administrative assistant in the marketing department. The silence. Ralph slowly put down his fork. His grandma made this little humph sound. Kayla muttered something that sounded suspiciously like, "I knew it." Ryan immediately went into full-blown damage control mode, saying Cody was confused, that he had multiple roles, that it was complicated. But the dam had broken. His family started asking specific questions that he simply couldn't weasel his way out of. When did you get promoted? He hadn't. Why did you say you had a team? He didn't. What about that corner office you mentioned? Also completely fictional. With each question, Ryan's stories unraveled more and more. He kept looking at me like this was somehow my fault, which honestly just made me even more determined to let everything come out. Tina, bless her heart, tried to smooth things over. She suggested we all have some cake and talk about happier things. As she went to the kitchen to get it, Kayla asked me directly about the restaurant I'd mentioned earlier. This was my moment. I took a deep breath and told them everything. How Ryan had invited me to meet his friends, how he belittled me throughout the entire dinner, how he then publicly dumped me in front of everyone, and just walked out, leaving me with a $347 bill I could barely afford. Ryan tried interrupting several times, but his dad shut him down with this look I'd never seen before. Pure, profound disappointment. Ryan's defense. That I was exaggerating and playing victim, that I had embarrassed him in front of his colleagues by not fitting in, and that leaving me with the bill was teaching me financial responsibility. His grandma actually snorted audibly at that last one. Cody, who had been quiet through most of this, finally spoke up. He confirmed my entire story, adding that he'd heard Ryan bragging to coworkers about how he'd put me in my place. He even pulled out his phone and showed texts from Pablo, receipts, people, discussing what had happened. Tina came back in with the cake, just as Ryan was trying to paint himself as the victim. She set it down and asked what she'd missed. No one spoke for a moment. Then Ryan's dad said, very quietly, that they needed to have a serious family discussion about honesty. Ryan exploded. Like a full-on temper tantrum. He accused me of turning his family against him, called Cody a traitor, and said everyone was just jealous of his success. What success? He knocked over his water glass, pointed at me, and yelled that a girl like me should be grateful he even bothered with me. His mom gasped. His grandma said something that I'm pretty sure was old people swearing. His sister just shook her head like she wasn't even surprised. I stayed calm somehow and simply said that the only thing I was grateful for was finally seeing who he really was. Ryan stormed out, slamming the door so hard that one of Tina's decorative plates fell off the wall and cracked. The aftermath was actually weirdly peaceful. Tina apologized to me like 50 times. Ralph looked tired and deeply sad. Kayla helped clean up the spilled water. Cody apologized for his part in the awkwardness, but said he simply couldn't stand by while Ryan lied to everyone. Then the strangest thing happened. Instead of asking me to leave, they actually insisted I stay for cake. So we all sat there, Ryan's ex-girlfriend, his coworker, and his family, eating birthday cake without the birthday boy. In any other situation, it would have been the most incredibly awkward thing ever, but somehow, it just wasn't. After cake, I helped Tina clean up in the kitchen. She kept apologizing and saying she had no idea Ryan had been lying about so much. She seemed genuinely heartbroken, not just about what he'd done to me, but about who her son had truly become. I felt bad for her, to be honest. No parent wants to realize their adult kid is, well, kind of terrible. She asked me quietly if there had been signs before, and I admitted that looking back, there were definitely red flags I'd ignored because I just wanted to believe the best about him. When I was getting ready to leave, Ryan's dad pulled me aside. He thanked me for my honesty and apologized again for what his son had done. He seemed so defeated, like he was trying to figure out where they'd gone wrong in raising him. I assured him it wasn't their fault. Ryan had made his own choices. Cody offered to walk me to my car, probably sensing I needed a moment to process everything. As we walked down the driveway, he mentioned that Ryan had been having serious problems at work for months, taking credit for other people's ideas, lying about his contributions, even faking emails from clients. He was actually on his final warning before potential termination. Suddenly, Ryan's desperate need to appear successful made a twisted, tragic kind of sense. His whole identity was built on this fake image of success and status. When I thought about it that way, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I thanked Cody for backing me up and drove home in a weird state of emotional exhaustion mixed with immense relief, like when you finally take off an uncomfortable bra at the end of a really long day. Sorry for the weird analogy, but you all know what I mean. When I got home, I had 3 missed calls from Vanessa wanting updates. I was about to call her back when my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "You've ruined everything. This isn't over." I didn't respond. I just blocked his number and made myself some tea. I should have been scared or upset, but honestly, I just felt incredibly tired. And maybe even a little proud of myself for finally standing up to him. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. But this morning, my phone blew up with 13 missed calls from Ryan's mom, his sister, Cody, and several numbers I didn't even recognize. Something significant had happened overnight, and based on the increasingly frantic voicemails, Ryan had completely lost it. All right, I'm finally ready to explain about those 13 missed calls. Thanks so much for being patient while I processed everything that went down. So, where were we? I woke up Sunday morning after the birthday dinner disaster to find my phone absolutely blowing up with calls from Ryan's family and Cody. At first, I legit thought someone had died or something awful. My stomach did that awful dropping thing as I scrolled through the notifications. 5 missed calls from Tina, 3 from Kayla, 2 from Cody, and 3 from numbers I didn't recognize at all. I called Tina back first, because she sounded the most worried based on her voicemails, which were just variations of, "Sabrina, please call me as soon as you can." She picked up on the first ring, sounding absolutely exhausted. Apparently, after Ryan stormed out of the birthday dinner, he'd gone on a complete rampage. He'd shown up at his ex-girlfriend's apartment at like 2 a.m., completely drunk and ranting about how I'd ruined his life. The ex, who I didn't even know existed to be honest, was understandably freaked out and called Kayla, who had to go pick him up. But that wasn't even all. Ryan had also spent the entire night sending unhinged messages to practically everyone we knew. He texted Cody, threatening to ruin him at work. "Lol, good luck with that when you're about to get fired yourself." He'd posted this long rambling status on Facebook about how he was surrounded by snakes, and how people would regret betraying him. Most concerning was that he'd actually posted my address in a private message to his friend Pablo, saying he was going to make me pay for humiliating him. Pablo, who apparently has some shred of a moral compass, immediately called Tina and forwarded the message, which is why she was trying so desperately to reach me. I was sitting on my couch in my ratty old pajamas, hair still in yesterday's messy bun, trying to process all this information while Tina apologized approximately 50 times for her son's behavior. I guess I should have been scared, but honestly, I just felt so incredibly tired. Like when your phone is stuck at 1% battery for hours, just waiting for it to finally die so you can charge it and move on with your life. Tina insisted on coming over just to make sure I was okay, which was super sweet but also made me panic clean my apartment. Nothing motivates tidying up like knowing someone's mom is about to see your living space, am I right? I was literally throwing dirty laundry into my closet and scrubbing dried toothpaste off the bathroom sink when my doorbell rang. It wasn't just Tina. Kayla was with her too. They brought coffee and those little pastries from the bakery near their house, which, not gonna lie, might be what I miss most about being with Ryan. We sat at my tiny kitchen table with the wobbly leg that I've been meaning to fix for months, and they filled me in on the whole Ryan situation. According to Kayla, this wasn't the first time Ryan had lied about his life. In college, he'd apparently told everyone he was on the baseball team when he'd actually been cut during tryouts. He'd once claimed to be talking to a popular girl who had no idea who he even was. There was a whole clear pattern of him creating this fictional version of himself that was more successful, more popular, more everything. As they were talking, my phone kept buzzing with texts from friends who'd seen Ryan's social media meltdown. Vanessa was freaking out, wanting to come over with her boyfriend, who does kickboxing, just in case. She watches too many crime shows, I swear. My group chat was blowing up with confused messages about the dramatic subtweets Ryan was posting. That's when my doorbell rang again. This time, I literally froze, wondering if it was Ryan. Kayla peeked through the blinds and let out a long breath. It was Cody. Apparently Ryan had been blowing up his phone all morning too, and Cody wanted to warn me in person since Ryan had mentioned paying me a visit. So there we all were. Me, Ryan's mom, his sister, and his coworker, sitting in my living room on a Sunday morning, trying to figure out what to do about this man-child throwing a tantrum because he got caught in his lies. If it wasn't so incredibly stressful, it would have been absolutely hilarious. Like, just imagine explaining this whole situation to someone who wasn't actually there. Cody mentioned that their boss had already gotten wind of Ryan's social media tirade. Someone had screenshotted and forwarded it. So Monday at work was going to be very interesting. Kayla was worried Ryan might do something even more stupid if he lost his job on top of everything else. That's when my doorbell rang again. This time it was the building manager, looking super awkward. Apparently Ryan had been downstairs making a scene in the lobby, loudly demanding to be let up to my apartment. The manager had refused, bless him, and threatened to call the police, at which point Ryan had stormed off, but not before yelling that I was a lying bitch loud enough for the entire first floor to hear. Tina looked absolutely devastated. She kept apologizing and saying she just didn't know where they went wrong with him. I felt terrible for her. Imagine realizing your adult son is basically a walking red flag. Kayla was more practical, suggesting I document everything, just in case Ryan's behavior escalated further. We were all sitting there trying to figure out what to do when my phone buzzed with a notification. Ryan had tagged me in an Instagram story. Against my better judgment and with everyone else in the room telling me not to look, I opened it. It was a photo of me from early in our relationship, sleeping on his couch with my mouth open, captioned, "Miss Perfect who ruined my birthday isn't so perfect. A girl like you should be grateful anyone took pictures of you at all." Like that was his big revenge. A slightly unflattering photo from 2 years ago? I actually laughed out loud, which wasn't quite the reaction Tina was expecting. But honestly, if that was the absolute worst he could do, I was going to be perfectly fine. Just as we were discussing next steps, there was a loud pounding on my door. We all jumped. Then we heard Ryan's voice, slurring slightly. "I know you're in there. Open the door." Cody immediately stood up like he was going to confront Ryan, which was sweet but unnecessary. I was already calling the building security guard, Perks of a slightly more expensive apartment building. Ryan kept pounding and yelling, and I could hear my neighbor's door open as she came out to see what the commotion was about. By the time security arrived, Ryan had moved on to actually kicking the door. The security guard didn't mess around. He told Ryan to leave immediately or he'd call the police. There was some back and forth that I couldn't quite make out, then blessed silence. The guard knocked gently and let me know Ryan had finally left the building but was still in the parking lot, possibly waiting. Tina was mortified. She insisted on going down to deal with her son herself, and honestly, I was happy to let her. She was so upset that Ralph, Ryan's dad, had to come pick them both up. The whole situation was just incredibly sad. After they left, Cody and I sat on my couch in stunned silence for a bit. He finally broke it by asking if I had any alcohol, which felt like the most appropriate response to the morning we'd just had. We split a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion, and this definitely counted as a special occasion. By the time Cody left, it was late afternoon, and I was emotionally exhausted. Vanessa came over and stayed the night, just in case Ryan decided to make a return appearance. He didn't, thankfully. We ordered pizza, watched some terrible reality TV, and tried to process the absolute soap opera my life had become. The next few weeks were, well, an adjustment, to say the least. Ryan got fired from his job after failing to show up for 3 days and sending completely inappropriate emails to several coworkers. He moved back in with his parents temporarily, which I only know because Kayla and I have actually kept in touch. She's turned out to be pretty cool. We grab coffee sometimes. Ryan tried to contact me a few more times, leaving voicemails that ranged from angry to tearful to just weirdly nostalgic. I saved them all, just in case, but I never responded. He even created a few fake Instagram accounts to message me, but they were so obviously him. Who else would write "you're making a big mistake" with that spelling error? That I just blocked them instantly. The weirdest part was running into him at Target about a month later. I was in the home section, looking at shower curtains, and suddenly there he was, holding a pack of socks and looking like he hadn't slept in days. We made eye contact, and for a second I honestly thought he might cause a scene right there. Instead, he just turned around and walked away, leaving his shopping basket right there in the aisle. That was 3 months ago now. Ryan eventually moved to his uncle's place in another state, according to Tina, who still sends me holiday cards, which is sweet but definitely awkward. His social media has gone suspiciously quiet. Kayla thinks his parents finally cut him off financially until he gets into therapy. As for me, I'm doing pretty good, actually. My apartment finally feels like mine again now that I've rearranged the furniture and replaced all the stuff that reminded me of Ryan. The strangest outcome of all this might be my unexpected friendship with Cody. We're not dating or anything, though Vanessa keeps trying to make that happen, but we grab lunch sometimes and text about stupid TikTok videos. It's nice having someone who witnessed the whole Ryan saga and completely understands why I now have trust issues the size of Texas. Looking back at everything, I'm not really angry anymore. Well, not just angry. I'm also weirdly grateful. Not for dating Ryan, definitely not that. But for finding out who he really was before things went any further. Imagine if I'd actually moved in with him or something. Shudder.